Hi, I'm Sam Sorbo. You've heard me talk about Mike Lindell, who I adore. You know, he's the inventor of My Pillow, and how that pillow has given me a good night's sleep that I need. In fact, I never knew how good I could sleep before I had my pillow. Mike continues to roll out new offers on his products, and the latest one is on his towel sets. Towels aren't something you think about often. I never knew what I was missing until I tried the towels just last year. Now, you have all helped build My Pillow into the incredible company that it is today, and you've trusted Mike Lindell to give you a great night's sleep. Mike's now changing the game with his 6-piece towel set. The set's made with USA cotton, making it extremely absorbent, and yet still providing that soft feel you look for in a towel. The set comes with 2 bath, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths, typically retailing for $109.99. But for a limited time, you can get this set for the low price of $39.99. And that's using promo code Sam Sorbo. So remember, all My Pillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. You just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener specials to get this insanely low price of $39.99 on the towel set. You'll find deep discounts on other My Pillow products as well. So enter promo code Sam Sorbo, or you can call 800-625-5983. That's 800-625-5983 for these great radio specials. Hi there, and welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. I'm very excited to have this guest with me. Robert Breedlove's a freedom maximalist. He's an ex-hedge fund manager. He's a philosopher in the Bitcoin space, and I thought this would be a really interesting conversation, as many of us don't really understand Bitcoin or even understand why Bitcoin. And so to him, Bitcoin is a fundamentally just a humanitarian movement, which I thought was such a fascinating way of looking at it. He says it's exposing the greatest con in human history, central banking. So without further ado, Robert Breedlove, welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show.
Thank you for having me, Sam. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. So, I mean, this whole conversation is something that most of us who are into, let's say, we've bought into the sort of lies surrounding our money, right? Most of us don't even want to have this conversation. It's kind of a scary conversation because our entire lives have revolved around the dollar, right? We grew up, we're from the United States. We grew up with the dollar, and that's really all we know. And so when you start talking about Bitcoin, you're talking about tearing down the foundational element of our culture in a sense. So if you start from that position, I need you to sort of bring people into the space where we can see money for the way that you see it. So can you do that? And don't be afraid to talk down to us, because most of us, I think I speak for a lot of people. This is like new territory for us.
Yes. Well, that's a great question. And I guess the first thing that's important to do is distinguish between money and currency. This is a very deep topic. We spend many hundreds of hours discussing it on the show, but let's just say for brevity's sake, gold became money because of a free market process. People engaging in consensual trade, not subject to coercion, selected gold as the best money. And we know this historically, right? Gold it's been good money for 5,000 years. It's still hoarded by central banks today. Many private individuals hold gold as well. The problem with gold, however, is that it lacks one critical property of money, which is called portability. So gold is heavy, right? It's a physical metal. It's difficult to move it across space very rapidly.
You can wear it, though.
You can wear it, but it's not. There's a number of issues here where if you're going to buy your morning cup of coffee with gold, you're talking about a few specks, right? So it's kind of impractical to use as a transactional currency.
Right.
And then 2, it's hard to move around the world, right? You have to, it's a lot of securities involved. You got to put it on a ship if you're going to send it internationally, et cetera, et cetera. So humans innovated around this shortcoming by putting an application on top of gold, which I would classify gold as money. We put an application on top of it called currency. And currency was just simply the piece of paper, like we're used to the dollar here in the United States, that was redeemable for gold. So the dollar was a promissory note for money. It's not money itself. It's a debt instrument. Basically says, I will deliver you money on demand. That's what the dollar originally was just that, a promise to money. And because it was paper based and later electronic based, it let us transact much more quickly. So it made transactability much more practical for day-to-day stuff like coffee and everything else.
Right. It gave fluidity to gold. But
Yes.
we grew up outside of that, right? So we all grew up with money is money and money is what it represents. And what you're trying to get us back to is no, money represents something else that then eventually we broke away from. And by the way, if you're interested in this, which you should be, I highly recommend Robert's show, which is called the What is Money Show. And it's a podcast. You can find it literally anywhere. But okay, so we broke away from what they call the gold standard, right?
Yes. And we've done this, it's happened a number of times across history, but the most recent event was the 1971 Nixon shock when he revoked gold redeemability for countries worldwide. Because after World War II, we had the dollar pegged to gold, we had every other currency in the world pegged to the dollar, so that we were basically in charge of the global economic order. But then post 1971, we separated from gold. So the dollar that was this debt instrument that was redeemable or convertible into gold suddenly was not any longer. And that is the problem, right? That's when we severed the anchor to economic reality, because gold, one of the key properties of gold that made it useful is that no one knows how to counterfeit gold. No one knows how to print gold, if you will, or inflate the supply arbitrarily. And that's what made it a good instrument for storing value over time. But when you break the dollar away from gold, you issue governments this ability to print money ad infinitum with no restrictions whatsoever. And then they're effectively able to use that to confiscate wealth from all users of dollars worldwide, which today we've got 330 million people in the US, but there are almost 4 billion users of dollars worldwide. So those inside the central bank running a dollar scheme that's not pegged to gold can steal from all of those users of dollars worldwide via inflation.
Via inflation, right. So they're not, so the theft is really underhanded in a sense that you can't even trace it. It's just sort of like, well, if they print more money and your money is worth less,
yes,
there's really no way to place blame in that scenario.
There's at least a lot of plausible deniability, and you see that being used today where they're blaming Putin for inflation or blaming the gas station owners or the greedy capitalists. But the actual blame is never placed on the original source, which is the central bank itself. And this is a key point, inflation and counterfeiting are the same thing. Inflation is legal
great.
counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is criminal inflation. There's mechanically no difference between these two phenomena, but there is a legal difference. So it's just purely an in-group and an out-group, right? A group inside, close to the currency spigot, that can benefit from proceeds stolen via counterfeiting or inflation, and then all the rest of dollar users that incur the cost.
It's really just a difference of who can be charged with a crime and who can't be charged with a crime.
That's right. It's a matter of which direction the guns are pointing. And
so with that, so actually, before we move on, my understanding was at some point we switched away from gold, but then we switched into petrodollars, where our currency was basically the currency of choice for trading oil, which is a commodity that every nation needs. And because it was pegged to the dollar, that bolstered the value of the dollar. So it didn't, in a sense, in a weird sense, it didn't matter how many dollars they printed, because the dollar was still going to be valuable based on its liquidity with the petrodollar as the currency of choice for the petrodollar, or for petrol. But recently they kicked us off of oil, right? I know I'm such a lay person with this stuff.
No, these are great questions. You're right on point here. So 1971, we break the peg to gold. I think it was 1973, so just 2 years later. Um, the central bank has a problem, right? There's no incentive for people to hold dollars that cannot be useful and redeemable for some commodity, right? So they move towards this petrodollar system, and I would say it wasn't so much that the dollar became the currency of choice for oil transactions. It was rather the currency of coercion. The
Oh, they
U.S.
imposed it.
imposed it. Yes, it was required under threat of U.S. military force that all contracts for the buying and selling of oil be denominated in dollars. And what that does is it creates what we call in economics reservation demand for the dollar. Now, anyone that wants to deal in oil, which is the lifeblood of the industrial economy, has to have some dollar balances. They have to transact in dollars. So this creates demand for the dollar. But again, it's not consensual. This was at the tip of a proverbial gun, so to speak. And so I guess the moral of the story is when you break from gold, you break the peg from actual gold, we had to re-peg, if you will, to black gold. There has to be some commodity underpinning money. And this points to, again, that value of gold, that it could not be counterfeited, right? You can't print gold. You can't print oil. There's a proof of work or energy expenditure necessary to create it. So you need to peg a currency to something like that, a commodity like that, to keep it sustainable over time. And indeed, that's what the US did. But recently, we've started to see a breakdown in that petrodollar system, specifically after we seized Russian central bank foreign currency reserves to the tune, well, we froze them. We haven't actually seized them yet, to the tune of $600 billion. Then Russia started to sell oil in rubles. So we've had this world that was kind of like the dollar was the central axis. A lot of people call this the unipolar world. Post Russia Ukraine conflict, we've started to shift back into a multipolar world where multiple currencies will be used to transact commodities like oil and others.
And that would then obviously destabilize the dollar, if not devalue it entirely.
It definitely reduces that reservation demand that existed for the dollar in the unipolar world. So if anything, we'd see more competition among big currency blocks like the Russian ruble, the Chinese yuan, etc. Longer term, I think it actually returns us to a hard money like standard, because in an environment where people can't trust one another, this whole debt-based system is built on trust. When trust breaks down, people seek assets that don't require trust, right? I don't want your promise to gold. I'll just take the physical gold. I don't want your promise to oil. I'll just take the physical oil. So that's kind of the world I think we're moving into today. And in that world, something like Bitcoin should be wildly successful, because it is the asset that requires the least trust known to man.
Okay. So we have to get into that. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about why Bitcoin is tangible. Right? Because that's the argument that you're going to make for us in a manner of speaking, at least. And again, my guest is Robert Breedlove. He has the What is Money show. It's a fascinating podcast. I really encourage you guys to tune in and brush up a little bit on your Bitcoin, because times are changing and Bitcoin is coming. I believe that myself. So just a brief break here. We'll be right back with Robert Breedlove on the Sam Sorbo Show. Hi, this is Sam Sorbo. We've discovered, my husband and I, a great American company that supports our traditional values and also the work we're doing to rescue our culture from the lies of the left. So I want you to go check it out. It's called NutraMedics.com, NutraMedics.com. And you can find there great health and wellness products that are derived from the rainforests. I've found that they work incredibly for me. I take their melatonin I get a much better night's sleep with that. I also take their relax medics and their mood medics, which are, I don't know what they are, but they're this natural blend of herbs basically, and really easy to take. They actually droppers, and I just love their products, and I love what they stand for, because they have a heart for this nation and they have a heart for people. And I don't know how you would have one without the other. And that's why maybe they have both. But I just love what they do. So go to nutrimedics.com, and you can actually go to sorbo.nutrimedics, and that's with an X, sorbo.nutrimedics.com. If you use Sorbo at checkout, you'll get a discount on anything that you purchase there. So go check it out, get a better night's sleep, get a better day, feel better about yourself. They've got a lot of great products there, including vitamins. I use them all. So trust me, it's great. Nutrimedics.com. And thank you so much for listening. All right, welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. You just saw him there, my guest, Robert Breedlove. This is the second part of our show, and we've just been talking about what money is, which is strangely the subject of his podcast, the What is Money Show. And Robert's been explaining to us how the dollar is in the process of losing its value. And we're not talking about just sort of the financial value, the fiscal value, the numerative value of the dollar, but actually the value of the dollar as a form of currency, full stop, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Because like, I've got money in my wallet and I can still go spend that. But I don't know if you've noticed lately, when you go to the stores, some of them will accept credit. Some of them will accept electronic funds, and some of them actually have stopped accepting physical dollars. Mm-hmm. And so with that, Robert, you're going to tell us why Bitcoin is actually more tangible than my dollar bill or my quarter that I hold.
Yeah, so language is a little tricky here. I would never argue that Bitcoin is tangible in the sense that you can touch it or handle it physically. However, it is very, let's say, substantial, much more substantial than the dollar, in that, like we said about gold, there was a necessary expenditure of energy to go and mine, to discover, mine, refine, convert gold into coinage. All of this takes work, basically. And it's that work that secures gold's supply integrity. So you can't just go out willy-nilly and print a bunch of gold and use it to tax the population. That's why people engaged in consensual trade chose gold over time. It was the best way to store economic wealth across time in a way that couldn't be inflated or confiscated by other people, right? That's what it was. And so Bitcoin has effectively taken those economic principles that made gold good money, and it's combined them with the internet. And this sounds kind of strange. You've taken, the scarcity of gold, let's say that the supply inelasticity, which means the difficulty in changing the supply of gold. Bitcoin has adopted that economic property, but it's put it in something like an internet protocol. So we can use this digital gold anywhere in the world, but we know that it has a fixed supply of 21 million. So there's no inflation possible, frankly, in the Bitcoin protocol. And it does this by anchoring the Bitcoin mining process, which is kind of complicated. But again, if you just analogize it to gold, it's basically the thing that protects it from being inflated or counterfeiting. It requires the expenditure of real world energy. You have to expend actual watts to mine Bitcoin. So in a nutshell, if you want a money that nobody can counterfeit, you need to peg it to the one thing in the universe nobody knows how to counterfeit, which is energy. Nobody can fake energy. It takes real work to harness energy and put it to a productive use. And that is the principle that Bitcoin has adopted to make it much more substantial than something like the US dollar that requires no energy whatsoever to expand the supply. At this point, the US dollar is nothing more than an SQL database maintained inside the Federal Reserve. And when these 7 guys decide for $4 billion users that they need more zeros in that database, they just hit, control P, control V, whatever the keystroke is, to just expand the dollar supply with no expenditure of energy whatsoever. So this becomes a mechanism for like limitless government overgrowth. And I think that's why we have so many pain points in the world today related to government.
So many pain points.
Well, the past 2 years, we've seen the world go quite a bit crazy. I think most people would agree. And I think a lot of that has to do with there being no checks and balances on the growth of government. Government can just, unlike every other organization or business in the world, that you have to be accountable to your profit and loss statement. If you're not profitable, your business goes away. The one exception to this rule is the fiat currency funded state, because they can always just print more money. No matter how many losses they produce as an economic enterprise, you can just print more money.
So government business is too big to fail and self-sustaining because they just print more money if they need more money. And we've seen that, and that's where our inflation comes from.
Yes.
And then they get us to somehow blame Putin for that.
Exactly. The plausible
deniability.
So and this is why I call it What Is Money Show.
Who did it? That guy, not me. I printed more money, but it's his fault. He made me do it.
Exactly. But people believe it. And I'm just...
Well, people believe it because they go to school.
Yes.
Right. We've had that 100%, conversation.
100%. And there's no, as I shared with you in our conversation, master's degree in accounting and finance, no one ever told me what money is. I had to go and dig up these esoteric books and spend years and years learning myself, still learning. But there's a reason it's not taught in school.
I have to recommend your show again, because one of the reasons that I reached out to Robert and that I wanted to talk to him is he's obviously very knowledgeable, and yet he has guests on, like I'm having him on, and I'm so unknowledgeable about what he talks about. And he himself on his show is not afraid to basically ask the dumb questions, ask the questions for the novice person like I am. That's why I enjoy listening to his show. But I want to ask you, because Bitcoin was invented by, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is Bitcoin was invented by some Japanese guy. And so he basically created a game. And in fact, if you look at it through that lens, it almost becomes more plausible rather than less plausible. But he invented a game and he wrote out the rules and he codified them in computer coding, so they can't be changed. And the rules are 21 million Bitcoin or whatever, right? And so to mine for Bitcoin, you need computers with a great deal of computing power. You need to be able to power them, which is the energy that's expended in the mining process. You have to code the computer somehow, program them to go and mine. I don't understand how that's done, but the computers go searching and they come up with Bitcoin somehow, right? It's crazy.
It is. When you get into the technical aspects, it does sound a bit crazy, but overall, yes, you're correct. There's a pseudonymous individual. Nobody knows. Actually, we're not even sure it's an individual. It could be a team. It's a guy, girl, or group of people. We're not sure. Named Satoshi Nakamoto, released this project onto the internet as an open source project. That means that all of the code of Bitcoin is inspectable. There's nothing hidden, right? And this is a very key property.
So open source is basically everybody's invited to play.
Yeah, and everyone can see the code down to the last letter. So there's no information asymmetry anywhere. You can't hide anything in the system because everyone's effectively running their own full version of the software. So whereas something like the Federal Reserve, we have no idea, like how many dollars are they printing? How many dollars have they printed? Who's profiting? How many dollars will they print? What are their criteria?
There's no way for us to know that, right?
No way. It's a black box.
We're not allowed in, but somebody does, like they have access, right? But we don't.
Well, look, there's a few people that own shares in the central bank, and they use it to profit through this system of systemic theft we've described via inflation. And they will do everything they can to protect that business. And again, ignorance of this system is in their favor. They don't want people.
Right.
There's this old quote. I think Ford may have said this. I'm not sure. Maybe it was Ford. He believed that if people actually understood money and banking, that there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Like, it's a giant scam. Clearly, like, anyone that understands the monetary system at all will tell you the same thing. Like, it's a giant pyramid scheme. Insiders profit at the expense of everyone else. To your point, it's a game, right? The money is a game. And so if you don't understand how the game is played, then you are the game being played, as I said before.
Oh, that's a good one too.
And
Well,
and
you're
so with
full of
central
good quotes.
banking, we just don't know. It's just, again, the black box. You don't know the rules. But in Bitcoin, we have this game where the rules are simple. It's no inflation, no counterfeiting, no stealing. Only the owners of the money can spend the money. No one else can make a decision about your money except you. And so, in a way, I think Bitcoin is like the first level playing field we've ever had in this game of money. And yeah, that's a really big deal for human civilization, because as we've seen, even with the fall of Rome, we debase the currency, then that compromises the political protocols, and then civilization collapses. So this printing of money always precedes destruction of the civilization. And I
So how
think
do we say, how do we save ourselves? And you have a minute.
So, my primary advice is to always just study. I'm not here to sell anyone Bitcoin. I'm just trying to share with people what I learn and actually involve them in the learning process. So I'm really thrilled to hear you've enjoyed that. I like asking simple questions, trying to get clear answers. I then think the assets you hold should be a reflection of your worldview. So after you've studied and developed a thesis about the world, that's what your portfolio should be a reflection of. For me, that involves a lot of Bitcoin, because I think the debasing of currency is what destroys civilization repeatedly over time. And as someone that wants to survive this round of currency failure, I save in Bitcoin and try to teach people about it as I learn about it.
Well, it's great. So people can find your show pretty much anywhere, right? They just look up What is Money?
Yeah, whatismoneypodcast.com. And then we're on YouTube, everywhere you get your podcast feed, pretty much. And then you can find me on Twitter as well at Breedlove22, BREEDLOVE22.
It's great. Is that your real name?
That is my real last name. My mom gave it to me.
That's
I get
great.
asked that a lot, though.
Do you? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
alone. Well, thank you so much for being on the Sam Sorbo show. This is really fascinating, and I hope people can check out your show and learn a little bit about this this house of cards that we live in, right? House of money.
House of cards is a good way to put it. I really appreciate it, Sam. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.